Hello and welcome to the Dream Team Professor podcast. My name is Scott, and in this episode, we're looking at the top players to target in Game Week 25 Sun Dream Team. Before we start, I just want to apologise because there was a very sad incident this morning where my microphone picked up its last piece of audio and died on me. So we are recording this, unfortunately, off a pair of Apple headphones. So yeah, new microphone will be on order very, very soon. By the next episode, but straight into this one. But yeah, just bear with me with the audio. I hope it sounds okay. So Game Week 25 Sun Dream Team is a big double game week for all teams. Every team in the Premier League plays twice, and it's a Friday 6:30 p.m. deadline. So not very long to get planned and ready, and not very long to get another microphone delivered either. So 8 p.m. kickoff, Leicester versus Brentford on the Friday evening. I think this is our third Friday running where we've had a Friday deadline. So a bit of a nightmare, but I think we're back to normal for next week, I hope. FA Cup, no, Friday again. Oh God, what's happening? Right, anyway, double game week for all teams this week. So going to run through the teams I think have the best doubles to target this week. These two don't have the best doubles, but I'm going to just mention them first because they're normally at the top of the pile, but this week I don't think they are. So Man City, Liverpool at home, and Spurs away. And then Liverpool, City away, and Newcastle at home. So both of those top teams do have tough fixtures and, of course, play against each other. So not going to be spending as much time on these two as we usually do, but there still will be a section. There'll be timestamps below as well, so if you want to skip about, you can do that. Some of the better looking double game weeks this week. So Brentford have got Leicester away and Everton at home. So they are going to be of interest this week. These Prem double game weeks do open up the player pool. The likes of Brighton and Mbeumo is, I think, the most transferred in player for the game week at the moment. So a lot more to choose from this week. I think they've got really, really good fixtures. The downside with them is in game week 26, they don't have a fixture at all. So it's going to be FA Cup, and then it's not showing yet, but there will be European fixtures also put into game week 26 when the draw takes place on Friday. So if you're looking at game week 26 and thinking, oh God, Arsenal are blanking or Liverpool are blanking, they're not. They're going to have a Champions League match put in there. There are some teams that blank, and I'll come on to them in a minute, like Brentford, but European teams will have a fixture put in there. So Brentford genuinely do blank for game week 26. So if you do bring someone in, you're going to have to take them out again later. Bournemouth don't have a blank in 26, and they have a really nice double game this week of Wolves at home and Brighton away. Brighton found some good form. They're back-to-back wins against Chelsea, so they've got Southampton away and Bournemouth at home. So they're going to be mentioned in this episode as well. Chelsea, we always wait for these double game weeks for them because we get a chance at Cole Palmer in the double. So Aston Villa away from home and then Southampton at home. I really like this double game week for Chelsea, despite their bad form, or should I say for Palmer, because there's not that many other Chelsea options that I like the look of. But Aston Villa usually don't do so great off the back of a Champions League match, and they have just only played yesterday in the Prem, so not as much turnaround time for Villa. And then they have Southampton at home, which is a really nice fixture to target. So I do think Chelsea are going to be of interest. Man United, Everton away, Ipswich home, really nice double, but again, there's not that much to choose from at the moment. And then Arsenal, West Ham at home, Forest away. And again, looks like it's going to be a blank in game week 26. It's not. And it also looks like we can probably get a very nice draw. So the way that the round of 16, the round of 32 took place yesterday, so the playoff rounds, Arsenal look like they're going to get a good opposition. So Juventus have been knocked out and they can now face either PSV or Feyenoord. So Arsenal are going to Holland for their second match. So game week 26 could be good for Arsenal as well. So like I said, game week 26, loads still to be confirmed. We'll know more on Friday. I hate this Friday turnaround. So we're waiting for Friday now to find out who's going to be playing who in Europe for it to take place in game week 26. So there's just not much time for our planning at all. We'll probably know around lunchtime who's going to play who, and then we'll have to lock in our teams by 6:30. So bit of a nightmare, but what can we do? So game week 26, the teams that genuinely do have blanks, which is no Europe and no FA Cup, Brentford, West Ham Everton, Leicester and Southampton. So I can't imagine there's going to be loads of players being picked from those teams, but the one that really does stand out is Brentford. If you want to target their really nice fixtures this week, they're going to blank in game week 26. So you are going to set yourself back another transfer. You will have to book a move in, unless you just decide to roll with Brian and Bumo for a week where he doesn't play, but it doesn't quite seem to make sense to do that for me. The teams that are showing as blanks, but there will be European matches added in there. So Arsenal, Liverpool, Tottenham and Chelsea. So they will have games in game week 26. We just don't know who they're playing yet. So it doesn't go into the Dream Team calendar until we know who they're playing for certain. And then we've got teams that just have a FA Cup single in game week 26. So Ipswich, Forest, Fulham, Wolves, Bournemouth, Brighton, Palace and Newcastle. So if you do choose one of those teams for their double this week, you get them for the following week in a single in the FA Cup. I had put teams to potentially double, which would have been City, but City went out last night to Real Madrid. So no double now for City. It will just be a single of Plymouth at home. And now they don't have a European fixture, maybe there's a chance of a strong team going out against Plymouth. So that could be an interesting one. But teams that have definite doubles in game week 26, Villa and Manchester United, both in the FA Cup, and both will have a European fixture put into game week 26. So while I don't think they have the best fixtures, they will have plenty of fixtures to target. Game week 26 will also be the second leg of Europe. Game week 27 will also be the second leg of Europe if you're looking that far ahead. So you'll have Europe in 26 and Europe in 27. As always, any questions on the schedule, just drop a comment below and I'll get back to you. But let's look at some teams and players to target. So Manchester City, tough double game week this week of Liverpool at home and Tottenham away. And their appeal has gone down even more now they've been eliminated from the Champions League by Real Madrid. We didn't think that they'd be able to turn this defeat around in the first leg to Real Madrid, and an Mbappe hat-trick sort of put the final nail in the coffin for them. But there will potentially be a chance for them to have a nice fixture in game week 26 of Plymouth at home. So now they're out of the Champions League. They really do just have the Premier League, which they're not going to win, and the FA Cup to focus on. And it's Plymouth at home in the FA Cup. So that fixture, we could end up seeing some of the big hitters playing against a lower side. We're going to start off, actually, we'll talk about the Haaland injury first. So Haaland picked up a knock in that previous game against Newcastle. I think it was just after his assist where he was sort of feeling his knee. And after the game, I think everyone sort of downplayed it a little bit because he did train the next day. But then Pep benched him yesterday and he didn't even come on to try and rescue the game. You could argue that sort of by 30 minutes, they're already 2-0 down. So the game was probably gone anyway. But Pep said after the game that he was feeling some discomfort and he said he wasn't ready. So he sat on the bench, but was unused yesterday. Now, it feels like every deadline, or in the run-up to every deadline, we're trying to guess, is some player injured or not injured? Should we sell them? Should we keep them? I don't know. We never know. It's just guessing. I can't tell you if he's going to play or not. We'll have to wait for the press conferences and hope that Pep Guardiola is honest around his injury. But in reality, we're probably not going to hear anything, and we're probably just going to have to guess whether or not he's going to play. Like some of us guessed whether or not Gakpo was going to play this game week at all, and then he ended up not playing at all. So it can go either way. It's just guesswork. I think my initial reaction is I'm probably going to keep Haaland and hope that he's fine for the double. But yeah, I couldn't honestly tell you. So we're all guessing on that one. One player we do think will play for City this week up top. People have been calling him the Egyptian Prince. I've been calling him the Egyptian Joker because he has made an absolute fool out of me, Marmoush, this week. So I bought him in last week, didn't I, for the Leyton Orient FA Cup game where he got the start but didn't deliver the points. I think it was just 3 shots on target. And then he only went on to play something like 8 or 9 minutes in the first leg of the Real Madrid tie. So I decided to take Marmoush out for Erling Haaland this week. And then I was on the receiving end of a Marmoush hat-trick against Newcastle. So absolutely smashed it. 26 points in that game. 3 bonus points just to rub salt in the wounds. And then last night, he came away with an assist against Real Madrid. So 6 points, finishing the week as the highest scoring player. 32 points for the game week. So yeah, what a move. I thought I was past all this, taking players out for hat tricks, but it seems not. So Marmoush, 4.4 million. He's going to be a good option, isn't he? He's going to be a good option, especially if Haaland is out. But even when Haaland was in the team, he was playing really, really well, making those runs off of Haaland. And I'm oversimplifying it, really. Just because he played against Leyton Orient, it doesn't mean he's going to haul. Just because he played against Newcastle doesn't mean he's not going to haul. Where Haaland was playing and the full team was playing against Newcastle, it obviously benefited to have those players around Marmoush. So, yeah, really good performance from him, but a real gutting one to take. But I was never going to keep him. I was always planning to bring Haaland back in for him. So, disappointing one. Let me know in the comments below if you kept Marmoush or you are on the pain train and took him out as well. Savinho, 4.4, 11 points. So got an assist and 3 bonus in that Newcastle match. He's up to 13 assists now for the season, which is the 3rd highest on the game. And he's the 3rd highest for bonus points as well. So having a really good season now. Savinho is a bit inconsistent at the start, but he seems to be finding his feet now, getting a run of games together, playing pretty much full minutes in most matches now. Was just 2 points against Real Madrid last night, but it's a bit of a dead game, wasn't it, after those 3 goals went in. So I still think Savinho, an okay option. But a lot of these options are going to be less appealing now that they are out of the Champions League. They're going to have less games than the other teams that are still in Europe. Foden, 6.4, 4 points against Real Madrid last night. 1 PPM off 3 bonus points, and that's the 2nd game running. So both matches this week he's finished 1 player performance mark off of getting the 3 bonus points, which is pretty annoying. I was set on keeping him, and I'm pretty sure I still will keep him. Again, that not being in Europe thing is going to be a big off-putting factor for some of these players. So I definitely was keeping him before this, but maybe the idea of maybe selling him eventually is not far around the corner. So Foden, still a fine option. I don't think there's any problem holding him, but yeah, less fixtures in the longer run now. And then Vardiol, I would pass now without Europe. So I think there was an argument that if they won this game, he could be worth having for the run-in. But now there's less fixtures. Someone like Munoz, I think, is probably going to score better than him and have a similar amount of fixtures, at least up until blank game 28. So Vardiol, I think it's a pass now for me. Aston Villa. So I know I took Marmoush out, so very disappointing. But someone that I bought in this week was Ollie Watkins, 5.1 million. Come back from injury. We got confirmation that he'd be in the squad from Unai Emery. We didn't know he was definitely going to start. And to be honest, I did think that his minutes might be reduced, maybe like a 60 and 60. But he's played 90 minutes in both matches and he's scored a goal in both matches. Maybe if they had run away with the game against Ipswich, he could have got an early sub, but they were chasing and trying to get that win. So Ollie Watkins, 5.1. He's got 2 goals this week, so 13 goals, 11 assists for the season, 18 points. And there's just plenty of fixtures now coming up for Aston Villa with Europe, with the FA Cup. Don't have the best double this week, but I think longer term, they are a really good option to look towards. The only thing to be careful of is game week 28. They do have a blank game week. So if you're loading up too heavily, just be aware you're either going to have to run through with non-playing players for that week, or you're going to have to transfer them out. Rodgers, 3.8 million. So he's the 4th highest owned player in the game right now, which is pretty crazy, to be honest. So he was the most transferred in, but he went from 26% ownership in the top 1K all the way up to 86% ownership. Now, I knew it was going to be high, and I'd sort of decided at one point that I was going to go against it because I didn't have him in my team. But I was really worried when I saw that it went up to 86% of the top 1K owning him. Just the 4 points against Ipswich and then the 3 points against Liverpool. So I got away with it, I think. He had a really good game against the Ipswich in that Ipswich match. 2 shots on target. Really thought he was going to come away with a goal. But 11 goals, 7 assists for the season. Longer term, he's still a fine pick, though, if you haven't got him. But you're just not really going to make any gains where everyone has him now at this point. Rashford was an interesting one, so 3.3 million. Now, I still want to see regular minutes before considering him, but I think he has looked good. So he came off the bench and got like 45 in that first match. Got an assist, 9 points. Points in so many different ways. I think he even came with bonus as well. Did look really, really good. Ipswich had 10 men. Ipswich did have 10 men, so there is that to consider. But it earned him the start against Liverpool. And I think he had a good game again. He did come off in the 67th minute, so got that early sub, and they have got options now off the bench. But I thought Rashford looked okay. I do think he looked okay. But there are plenty of striker options, and he's down as a striker, so he has to look more than okay to justify having one of those spots. Martinez, 3.8 million. So he's disappointed me a little bit. So I had Raya for a little while, didn't I? And he wasn't really doing it. He was blanking. And then I kind of decided I was going to take him out. And I think he got a clean sheet. He might have blanked again after that. I can't remember. But didn't really feel like he was justifying the price point. But since I've made that swap over and got Martinez has been pretty poor. And Raya has started doing well again. So it's been a little bit frustrating. Martinez has got one extra fixture over Raya in the next 6 weeks if Aston Villa end up winning their FA Cup match against Cardiff. So in that scenario, you do end up gaining a fixture. So this game week 26, you'll gain a fixture over Raya because Martinez has FA Cup and Europe, whereas Raya only has Europe. 27, both have a double Prem and Europe. 28, though, Martinez blanks, so Raya will gain the fixture back, but then you'll have the FA Cup after that, so Martinez earns the fixture back over Raya. So longer term, you're probably going to get one extra game out of Martinez if you're not hopping around your keeper spots, if you are just holding the whole way through. But Martinez, although he's top for bonus out of the keepers and second best for saves, David Raya has got double the clean sheets of what Martinez has. I think I heard that Martinez or Villa have only had 3 Premier League clean sheets as well. So Martinez doing well for those extra points, but you just don't see them keeping as many clean sheets as Arsenal at the minute. Let's look at Liverpool. So tough double game week coming up. So it's Man City away and Newcastle at home. Now, I don't know if it's just wishful thinking as an Arsenal fan, but I do think that Liverpool seem to be having just a little bit of a wobble at the moment. Now, they're getting away with it. They managed to come away with the point against Villa, although at times I don't think they looked particularly convincing. And even the Wolves game, I don't think they had a great game there, especially in the second half, but they still came away with the win. So, I mean, that is the sign of champions, isn't it? To still get the results in the games where you're not playing well. But I do feel like they have dipped slightly. So unconvincing, I'd say, in both games this week. And a tough double game week to come of City and Newcastle. Cody Gakpo, 4.9. So missing this game week. I think some people kept him with the hope that he'd play the second fixture. But it was announced like the day before the second fixture that actually he wasn't going to make Aston Villa. So really disappointing if you did decide to keep him. I decided to move him on last minute and it just happened to go my way. But it's all guesswork with these injuries, I'm afraid. And we're probably going to have the same scenario with Haaland. So no FA Cup now for Liverpool after that. So in Game Week 25, if you look... I didn't mention this fixture ticket is from ffstuff.co.uk. I mention it every episode and I forgot to say it. So ffstuff.co.uk, the fixture ticket that's in the top corner or the one I used at the start of the episode is from that website. Free to use, really handy tool. So do head over to ffstuff.co.uk to check that one out. Right, so yeah, no FA Cup fixture in Game Week 26 for them, but they will have a European fixture added in. And it's quite interesting the way this has panned out now. So when it comes to the knockouts, the round of 16, I actually think that Liverpool have ended up with a worse draw for finishing top than how it's fallen for Arsenal because of the way the playoff rounds have gone. So Liverpool finished top, and now their reward is they'll either play PSG or Benfica. I think PSG might have won 10-0 on aggregate. I think they've got a 7-0 win or something like that. So, yeah, the thought of playing PSG at the moment, not great. But Benfica's still a tough game as well. Whereas Arsenal can now play PSV or Feyenoord. So you'd have to say that Arsenal finishing lower in the table have now ended up with a better draw in the next round. So that is something to consider when planning this out. We'll see who they face. But Liverpool, if they end up playing PSG in those knockout games, I don't think that's appealing at all. And yeah, some of your attackers or even maybe defenders you may want to consider moving on. So Diaz, 3.2. Now I'm going to just start there. Goal and an assist in that first game, 12 points. He owed us. Those of us that kept him, he did owe us some points because he's been useless over the last few weeks. So many 2 points. But he did finally get a 12-pointer. He's on 13 goals, 5 assists for the season. But he was benched in the second game, even with Gakpo being out. I know he has started quite a few games in a row now, starting all the way from that FA Cup where he disappointed, the Prem game where he did disappoint after that. I'm sure he did. He's disappointed plenty of times. But anyway, yeah. Diaz, I would just take the points and run at this point. I know it could still be appealing to try and keep him because he was rested for this game and he could start the following game. But quite honestly, I think I'm going to take my 12 points and run. 3.2 million. He looked better off the left, but Gakpo will be back eventually. He will take that left spot eventually, and then he'll go back to playing that striker spot where he hasn't looked as good. So I don't think, well, I certainly will be buying Diaz. It's probably not the end of the world if you have to keep him, but I'd probably just take the points. Mohamed Salah, sick of talking about him now, aren't we? Everyone owns him. He's smashing it every week. 29 goals, 20 assists now for the season. He got the goal from the penalty spot against Wolves, and then a goal and an assist against Villa. And I don't even think he had a great game against Villa, to be honest with you. But he's just there in the right moments when he's called upon. He delivers, and he's delivered another 12 points yesterday. 21 points for the game week. Now, I don't think we need to speak any more about him until we come on to the captaincy section of the episode. So I'm going to skip ahead. We've all got Salah. Trent, 5.7. I think it's been a bit of a fortunate game week for Trent this week. So 5.7 million, subbed off in the 64th minute. I think 3 minutes before the goal was scored by Wolves. So he's banked the clean sheet in the first match. And then he grabbed the goal in the second match against Aston Villa, scoring in the 61st minute and then being subbed off for Conor Bradley in the 66th minute. So I think another one, most people have got him. 3 goals, 8 assists for the season. Incredible player to have. But I do feel like it was a little bit of a fortunate game week for him. But still, if you don't have him, I would still buy him. Virgil van Dijk has been frustrating. So someone that I bought in, I think I've replaced Gabriel with him ahead of Gabriel blanking. And since doing that, Gabriel obviously kept the clean sheet against Leicester. And I think Virgil van Dijk's got 3 2-pointers in a row, or basically 3 blanks in a row. So really quite annoying, Virgil van Dijk at the moment. Man City away, Newcastle at home. Again, don't look like great fixtures. They're not really keeping as many clean sheets as they were at the start of the season. So while he's got plenty of fixtures, I am tempted to move Virgil van Dijk on. Let me know if you're feeling that same frustration. Especially, I think it's going to come down to Friday as well. So if they do end up with that maybe better draw of Benfica and it's the tough double this week. Game week 26 is a single, let's say at home to Benfica. I think that's a possibility. If they play Benfica in 26, maybe it's not as bad. And in game week 27, it's Southampton at home paired with Benfica, maybe away. Maybe that's tempting enough to keep Virgil van Dijk. And then you've got the Carabao Cup final in 28. So maybe that is enough. But I must say, if they draw PSG away in the first match in 26 and it's a single and they're looking at City, Newcastle, PSG, and Arsenal maybe end up with Feyenoord at home, a move to Arsenal would look nice. I think a move to Munoz would look nice. I think he's got the same amount of fixtures for the next 2 weeks at least. But then he sort of loses the fixture in Europe and then blanks. So, yeah, I would consider maybe selling Virgil van Dijk, especially if they do end up with that PSG fixture. It's not the end of the world again. It's a fine hold if you have to. It's not anything urgent, but can we make these little tweaks to make our teams better? Let's look at Brentford. So a team that's not usually on the slides. 4.7 million, Brian Mbeumo. So second most transferred in player I've put down here. Let's double check that because I made these notes yesterday. If you want to check this out, by the way, you go to the Dream Team app, the Games Hub and top transfers. If you're on the app, you can scroll all the way down to the bottom. He is second most transferred in player. Obviously, the most transferred in player is Marmoush because he's going to score a hat-trick every week. So, yeah, Marmoush, then Mbeumo, followed by Palmer, followed by Watkins, and followed by Cunha in number 5. So, Brian Mbeumo, second most transferred in. Just 1 goal in his last 5 appearances, though. So, isn't quite on the goal-scoring form from earlier in the season. But he does still score well without returning. That's one of the bonuses about him. So he's on 14 goals, 4 assists for the season. Hasn't quite been scoring the same amount of goals as earlier in the season, but he is the penalty taker and his average points are high even when he doesn't return. So 7.9 average, 21 bonus points. Penalties, he's got corners, set pieces. I think he's taking a lot of the free kicks. I think he does share with Damsgaard at times. But he's the 3rd highest scoring midfielder in the game behind Palmer and Bruno Fernandes. And a bit like Palmer, actually. He's not obviously got, well, Palmer will be able to play Europe, but hasn't so far. And Mbeumo obviously hasn't either. So these two are really excelling in midfield. The big downside is this blank in game week 26, because you do have to build that into your plan. And if you are going to go Mbeumo, that's 1 less transfer you can make the following week if you're taking him out. So, yeah, a little bit off-putting, and there are still other good options, but I do think Leicester away is a nice fixture. Everton at home, maybe not so much at the moment. Moyes has got them playing well, but I do think overall this looks like a nice double. Over the last 6 game weeks, though, Sharda 3.1 has outscored Mbeumo by 3 points. And then Damsgaard and Visser are only 4 or 5 points away from Mbeumo themselves. So you don't have the money for Mbeumo. You could still go for one of these guys. Sharda, Damsgaard, who I especially think has been brilliant, or Visser up top. So there are other options, but all blank in game week 26. Bournemouth. So tougher fixtures, I would say, than Brentford. Wolves at home, Brighton away. But they do have a fixture in game week 26, which is another home match against Wolves in the FA Cup. They're also on a lot better form than Brentford, so they've only lost once in their last 15 matches, winning 10 of those games. So I actually feel like Bournemouth are maybe a bit more of an appealing proposition just for that extra fixture and maybe a little bit more trustworthy form. I do think the goal share is probably split a bit more, and it's maybe a little bit harder to predict where the points are going to come from. But they're scoring plenty of goals, so typically a lot of them are still ending up on the score sheet or the assist sheet, shown by this week where they won 3-1 against Southampton. Dango got a goal. Dango Atara scored. Cliver assisted. Semenyo assisted. So they're all getting on the score sheet or assist sheet, if that's a thing. Clive at 3.9 million. So he's the highest scoring player over the last 6 game weeks. 7-point assist against Southampton, 12 goals, 6 assists for the season. The only downside on him is he got 26 minutes in the last round of the FA Cup and 67 minutes in the round before that. But it is just a FA Cup game that week, and there is no Premier League game paired with it. So it is just the one fixture, and they are now reaching the sort of later stages. Maybe they do go full strength. He's on pens. He does only have 3 bonus points, though, Kluivert. So he is very goal and assist dependent, unlike, I don't know, Brian Mbeumo in the last slide, who gets bonus points, shots on target, all that sort of stuff. Kluivert kind of is just goals and assists, but it is still a really, really good option. Semenyo, 4.2 million. Now, I mentioned I like Kluivert more than Semenyo, and I still feel like I feel the same, but a few of you did comment that Semenyo is more consistent, and I probably would agree with you, actually, looking at that. Kluivert's stats kind of have been padded up a little bit by those 2 hat-tricks that he scored, and there's a lot of penalties in there as well. But Semenyo, 9 goals, 6 assists, got an assist against Southampton, but he's got 33 shots from 27 games, or shots on target, which is the 3rd highest for midfielders. His minutes seem a little bit more secure, so he's had 6 straight 90 minutes, whereas Kluivert does get substituted. And even in the FA Cup in the last round, he played 90, 45 in the round before that. So I do think Semenyo's minutes probably a little bit better, but maybe it's down to whether or not you fancy sort of having a pen taker. I still fancy having the pen taker in my side. There is Dango Otara, 3.3 million. It's a nice price, but I find it a lot harder to justify as he is down as a striker. So for me, between Kluivert and Semenyo. Next up is Brighton. So back-to-back wins, both against Chelsea, since their 7-0 loss against Nottingham Forest. Now, they're facing Southampton in the first fixture, who are bottom of the league and have conceded the most goals. So that is a real appealing one. But then in the second fixture of the double game week is at home to Bournemouth, which is going to be a tough game, as we've seen. But actually, Brighton seem to have done a bit better in the tougher games this season. They're always a horrible game for my team, Arsenal. I've seen they've had results against United this season, I think City this season. Generally just up their game for the big games. So that Bournemouth-Brighton game could be a real good one to watch. The last 6 game weeks, there's not much to separate their top scoring players. So 1 point separates Rutter, Mitoma and Minte as Brighton's top scoring players. 53 points, 52 points and 52 points. So all doing really, really well. Let's try and split them. So Mitoma, 3.6 million, 4 goals, 1 assist in his last 6 matches. Back-to-back goals against Chelsea. One of them, beautiful touchdown. Really playing quite well at the moment. But 7 goals, 4 assists for the season. He's played 90 minutes in both of the recent FA Cup games as well. So if you do go for Mitoma, I think you're pretty sure. I can never be fully sure with Brighton managers because they love a bit of rotation. De Zerbi was worse, but Hertzler still does his fair share. But I'm fairly confident Mitoma plays the bulk of minutes across these games here. So Southampton, Bournemouth, and then in the FA Cup against Newcastle away from home. So I think Mitoma is a good shout and a safe shout for the minutes. Rutter 3.2. He's had very similar returns, 7 goals, 5 assists. But I would say that Mitoma's minutes look much more reliable than what Rutter's had. Rutter's had quite a lot of, well, he's starting quite a few games recently. He has had quite a few benchings and sub appearances, so, or sort of coming off early as a sub. So I do think that Mitoma's minutes look better than Rutter's. And then Minte 2.5 has started doing really well recently, a brace in the last game, 90 minutes in the last 3 matches running, but he has been in and out of the team at times as well this season. So overall, out of those 3, I just feel like Mitoma probably is the safer pick when it comes to minutes, rotation. I don't think there's much to split them on form at the moment. Let's look at Chelsea, or more specifically Cole Palmer, because I just don't think there's that many appealing options from Chelsea at the moment. So they have Aston Villa away from home this week, followed by Southampton at home. Now, Villa away is always going to be a tough game. We saw the game that they gave Liverpool yesterday. But I guess that probably would have taken a fair bit out of Aston Villa yesterday, while Chelsea have had a bit longer to rest. And then Southampton at home in the second match. That's the one you want to target, isn't it, for sort of every game week. So I do still like the double this week. And then in game week 26, they will have their Europa Conference League match where Palmer is now eligible to play. He's in the squad. Whether or not he plays, that is going to be the risk. We don't know, but they've got a number of injuries now. They've also got rid of a few players in the last window. So I feel like they are going to play Palmer, especially if it's just one game that week. And then you look a bit further ahead, that's followed up by, it's not a single, it's a double again with Europe. So Leicester at home and the second leg of the European tie. So two really nice Premier League fixtures and potentially two really nice European fixtures if you can get them. So I do feel like Palmer is a good shout, but I've got the graph on the screen of his recent form. It hasn't been the best. So 5 points against Brighton, 6 points against Brighton before that, 8 points against West Ham. So only 2 assists from those 3 games I've just mentioned there. 4 points against City and 4 points against Wolves. Now, not many goals in that run. But then the game before that, game 19, was a 14-pointer and a 10-pointer against Palace. So we have seen him hit big numbers this season, but he hasn't done it in the last 5 games, just assists. So, do we still pick him? I still think he's worth picking this week because the fixtures, I feel like the fixtures breed form. The real question mark, though, is it a Palmer thing or is it a Chelsea thing? I feel like it's more of a Chelsea thing that's causing Palmer to not play as well. And I still think they're going to be levels above, maybe not Villa, but Southampton and Leicester. So I still like the look of Palmer for this one. 5 losses in the last 5 games. 3 losses in the last 5 games for Chelsea. So really hasn't been great. But I still think Palmer's going to do well. And I still think he has to be considered as a captaincy shout. It's just, it seems a little bit more risky now when you've got the likes of Salah playing for the best team in really good form against Palmer, who has got the potential, has got really nice fixtures, but hasn't done it for the last few game weeks, and neither have Chelsea. So that is going to be something we talk about again when it comes to captaincy. But overall, as someone to have in your team, I still think is a really good shout. Man United, so another disappointing defeat against Spurs last week, but a nice double game week in game week 25. So Everton away and Ipswich at home. People were saying about selling Bruno Fernandes last week, and I didn't like it. He just seems to score points even when he doesn't do anything, and that's exactly what he did in the Spurs game. So no attacking returns, but still 3 bonus, 6 tackles, a big chance created. Now, I don't mean he didn't do anything in the game. He could quite easily have had an assist if there was a striker to put the ball away, but there's not. But he still comes away with 9 points in that game without any attacking returns. So he's just so consistent for these points. I think he's a great player to have for 25 and maybe even captain. I would be keeping hold of him. And then there's loads of fixtures coming for United. So game week 26 is Fulham in the FA Cup. There'll be a Europa League match paired with that. And in game week 27, Arsenal at home with another European match paired with that. And then game week 28, Leicester. So I just think there's good fixtures coming and plenty of fixtures. So I still think Bruno, a great hold for this run. But there's not much else to look at from United, I don't think. Let me know if you disagree. But Ahmad is now out for the season after ankle surgery. I do think maybe depending on how the Europa draw looks, defenders could be okay. Ipswich, Everton, Fulham. I mean, Fulham are pretty good. Leicester, maybe there's some clean sheets there, but I just think most of us have got enough budget moving around now that we can probably aim a little bit higher than United defenders. Arsenal, so we'll actually start off with a keeper. David Raya, 4.3 million. So extends the lead at the top of the goalkeeper charts to, I think, 32 points now after Martinez played yesterday. Grabbed a clean sheet against Leicester, 2 saves, 3 bonus points. So although Martinez has the extra fixture over the sort of longer term, Raya 14 clean sheets to Martinez's 7. So I definitely think Arsenal probably going to shut up shop while their attack is looking a little more toothless without some of these players. I think defence is the stability of the team. So I do think Raya is still a good shout. 11 points this week. You'd be chuffed if you had him. 4.8 million, Gabriel. Now, I talked about maybe taking Virgil van Dijk out. Gabriel could be an option to replace him with if you haven't got him already. I don't have an Arsenal player in my team or a defender in my team. And I do feel like maybe I should have one of these two. If you took him out for the blank, you'd have been pleased to have him return for the Leicester game if you brought him straight back in. 7 attacking returns, 5 goals, 2 assists for the season. And I just think the fixtures are looking a little bit better. So if this ends up being like West Ham, Forest, let's just say Feyenoord, and then Man United, Feyenoord again, Chelsea at home, I don't think that is the worst. Chelsea and United not firing as their usual selves. Forest away will be tough. West Ham at home, I still think that's a clean sheet potential fixture. So I think Arsenal defence still looks good. Let's look at attackers. So there isn't much to choose from Arsenal at the minute. So we're down to the bare bones in attack. We've got Ethan Dwanieri, the 17-year-old, playing on the right-hand side, just bossing things. Through the middle, Trossard obviously can be relied on in multiple positions, but I don't love it as a dream team pick. And then we had Raheem Sterling on the left, who I just really want him to do well, but it ain't happening. So we'll talk about Nwaneri because I think he's the best option from our attackers. 1.9 million. He hit maximum bonus in that game. He got an assist. He takes corners from the right. He even hit the woodwork twice. He just had a phenomenal game. 15 player performance marks he finished on in the end. You need 12 to get the max. 14 points. 2 shots on target, tackle points, and he's going to be nailed until Saka or Martinelli return, which is not until the international break, which I think is either 28 or after 28 or after 29. Yeah, after 28, that's when Saka Martinelli could be back. So, yeah, I think Nwaneri is a fine pick. 1.9 million, it's a bargain. Like if you're struggling for budget, I'd rather have budget Nwaneri now than scrimping on the keeper maybe. So yeah, I think he's a really, really good shout. Mikel Merino. Now, people were mentioning Arsenal potentially playing different players up top now that we have Havertz injured and a lot of options missing. Gabriel Jesus obviously as well. But Merino was one of the names that was mentioned that could potentially play up top. Some had mentioned Calafiori as well. But Merino came on off the bench in the 69th minute when Arsenal couldn't score. Sterling came off. Merino went straight into that centre-forward position that we thought he could get into. And he scored 2 goals in 20 minutes. It was incredible. And really good finishes as well. One great header from that Nwaneri cross. And the other one arriving at the back post from a Trossard cross, put away nicely. And I heard the point made, and I think I agree that I don't even know if Havertz scores those chances. So really impressive, but maybe just don't get fully carried away. I don't know whether he's going to be able to replicate that on a regular basis. Probably not. And I also am not 100% certain that he starts every game from now on. I do hope he does because I don't particularly want to watch Sterling again on that left wing. I'd rather Trossard just goes out there and we try Merino up top. But I'm not certain that he starts every game up there because he said after the game that he hadn't even trained as being the striker. And Arteta said the same. Now, they could be lying, but I don't know. I kind of believed them. So Merino, one to watch maybe if we end up with a £3.3 million mid out of position. but I just tread carefully with it, I think. And then best of the rest. Now, I don't think all of these teams really deserve to have their own whole section, because I just think the fixtures aren't the best. So Spurs have got Ipswich away and City at home. Palace have got Fulham away and Villa at home, which are two tough fixtures. And then Wolves, Bournemouth away and Fulham at home, I think is a tough fixture as well. But there are some players from these teams that I still think could be worth targeting. So Pedro Porro, if you haven't got him, 4.5 million. I think most teams have got him now, but he just seems to be a bit fixture proof, to be honest with you. He doesn't rely on the clean sheet points, although he has had a few recently, but he's the second highest scoring defender in the game. Does well for bonus, does well for attacker returns. So I still think get him, even with these fixtures. Munoz, 5.2 million. So similar to Porro, really. Attacking threat, multiple routes to points, great for tackles, shots on target, always plays really far forward. Now, he does have a bit of a tougher fixture schedule to navigate a little bit. So it's a double this week, Fulham and Villa. Millwall in the FA Cup, but they go full strength in the FA Cup, so he should start that one. But then that is just a single, whereas there are some teams that double. And then in Gameweek 27, it's Ipswich at home, whereas like a Virgil van Dijk, for example, will have a Premier League match and a European match. But Ipswich at home for Munoz, he could still outscore Virgil van Dijk, who seems to have a habit of 2-pointers at the moment. But then in Gameweek 28, there is a blank there. So you will end up having to move him on. And then if you're loaded up on, say, Villa players as well, having Villa players and Palace players that both blank in 28 isn't ideal for your team planning. So it's got to work for you, but I still think he is a really good option. 5.2 million, though, really expensive. Mateta, 3 goals in his last 3 games. He's got the penalty share. Eze's not fully fit at the moment, so more likely Mateta takes them anyway. 14 goals, 2 assists for the season. Same fixture schedule as Munoz, so have to consider that as well. But nice fixtures in 26, Millwall, and 27, Ipswich at home could be good. Or Matthias Cunha from Wolves now. He's made it 3 goals in 3 games, averaging 13.7 across his last 3 because he had a 12-pointer, 17-pointer in the Cup and a 12-pointer before that. So a really, really good shout. Again, someone that scores points in a variety of different ways. 13 goals, 4 assists. So yeah, some other options there. A quick look at captaincy. So Salah away to City, Newcastle at home. Now, I looked at this from a distance and thought this game week is one where I am going to go different. But he's making it hard, isn't he, Salah, where he just keeps delivering week in, week out. And then City, Newcastle, 2 teams that you think will still be tough fixtures. And then City are leaking goals to Real Madrid. And then, I don't know what Newcastle did against City. Let the floodgates open. After being so tight against teams like my team, Arsenal, City smashing goals past them. So, yeah, 2 teams that should be difficult, but are conceding a fair few goals themselves at the minute. So it maybe isn't as straightforward as we first thought. Salah could still just be a decent cap, even with the 2 tougher games. Haaland, I put on the list, but I think we can probably rule him out now that he's a doubt. It just doesn't seem worth going there in case he just plays the 1. Palmer. Now, Palmer's the one I had had my eye on when I saw this fixture schedule a while back, and I thought that looks like a Palmer week. And I think form out of the equation, Villa away, Southampton at home, I do think that is the best pairing for captaincy. But it's the opposite to the Salah situation. I think you've got the great fixtures, but the form isn't quite there for his team. And I don't know if it's fair to say himself or whether it's the rest of the team letting him down, but the form hasn't been as good, but the fixtures are great. So it's just whether or not you think the fixtures are going to lead to the form, or whether you just think they're not going to deliver. I still do like that Palmer captaincy shout. And I think Brian Mbeumo is a good shout as well. So Leicester away, Everton at home. You get the captain playing in that first fixture on the Friday night, whether or not you think that's a good thing or not. But then Everton at home, maybe that's one that from a distance looked a lot better, but now we've actually arrived. Everton are looking good. So maybe the second fixture, not so good. I still think Leicester is a good game, although did make it difficult for Arsenal as well. So Mbeumo, I still think he's a shout too. Bruno Fernandes, Everton away, Ipswich home. I think typically in a sort of just a European week, well, no, they're not European teams, but like if you just looked at those two fixtures, you would say that Bruno Fernandes has a really nice double there for the captaincy. But I just feel like the other options are more appealing this week. And United suffer with that same scenario as Chelsea maybe at the moment, or probably just Chelsea. They're not scoring a ton of goals at the minute. So you do feel like Liverpool could still score a fair few goals, and then you assume it's going to be Salah. Whereas I wouldn't be surprised if, United scored like one goal in each of those games potentially. So Bruno, always a good shout, but I'm not quite convinced. Isak, I think people could sleep on him for this week. So a lot of people don't have him and probably won't have him. I've not even mentioned him in my slide. So, but Forest at home, again, Forest have been good, but I still think Isak could do well in that one. And then Liverpool away, they are conceding goals. So I still think Newcastle could do something there. And as an Arsenal fan, I'll be hoping that Newcastle can do something there. Yeah, I think what's just worrying me is I think it looks a really good week to go different. And I still am leaning towards going different. But you also wouldn't be surprised if Salah done well, or even if Haaland done well, if he was fit. We saw Haaland score against Real Madrid twice. We saw Haaland score against Arsenal once. The bad fixtures aren't always bad for these great players. So just something to consider. Boosters, if I had any left, I would be playing them this game week. I think double Prem week. I think just look straightforward to play them for this week. Depends what you've got left, though. I've got none left. If you just had Max Captain left, I think it looks a good one, just for the reason we've just spoke about. If you've got majority of those players we just talked about, but you don't know which one's the best to captain, job done, makes it easy for you. And I think the captaincy is going to be so split anyway this week that, I mean, the worst, let's say Salah is going to be maybe the highest capped. If it ends on Salah, that's probably the worst scenario. But I think there's going to be plenty of people that go against Salah this week, and you'd end up doing better than them. Or if you end up with the differential doing really well, you've got them secured, and then you'd be beating the bulk of the Salah captaincy or something like that. So, yeah, I think Max Captain looks decent. Goal bonus, I would still play it if it's like the only booster I had left, I think. But the pros, everyone doubles. Another pro is that you know what doubles are ahead of you. Whereas if you wait for future doubles, we're still waiting on things to change. So we will find out the European draws on Friday. So you might like the look of those a little bit better by then. But then future European draws, we don't know who goes through, who everyone's going to get. The same with the FA Cup. There's still things to be confirmed later down the line. So I like just playing what's in front of me with this one. But the downside is there are a few tough matchups for the likes of City. And maybe if Haaland's out now, that's going to make things worse. And the captaincy is a big thing on this booster as well. And it's a little bit harder to nail down the captain. So 12th man, I think is fine. You could do an Mbeumo. You could do, I don't know, Acuna, someone that you may not necessarily want for the following week, but then you don't have to remove them. So here's how I got on for game week 24 Sun Dream Team. So my moves this week were Cody Gakpo out. Actually, just read it the other way around. I don't like the way it shows up on the screen. I did Cody Gakpo out for Ollie Watkins. And then Omar Mamouche to Erling Haaland. Now, Cody Gakpo, we had the doubts that he was going to be available for the following match. He picked up a knock in the previous game. And then it was kind of a doubt, but I do feel like we kind of thought that there was a chance that he'd played a second match. Ollie Watkins, on the other hand, Unai Emery had said that he would be with the squad for the next match, for that Ipswich match. but we didn't know for certain if he was going to start or not. So my initial thoughts pre the press conference is that I was going to probably take Luis Diaz out of my team and replace him with Morgan Rogers. And then the Marmoush move to Haaland was always going to happen. But when I heard that the Gakpo doubt seemed a little more serious, and then the risk of Watkins looked less, I kind of felt like I wanted to take the chance on going a little bit different. I know there are teams with Rogers and Watkins, but I felt like Watkins is probably the better Aston Villa asset out of the two of Rogers and Watkins, and I could only get one of them. So it did mean going against the sort of most transferred in player, but it did pay off this week. Now, it could still hurt in the future game weeks if I don't bring Rogers back in. But that part of it did feel like it paid off, going for Watkins and going against Rogers for this week. The bit that didn't pay off was taking out Omar Mamouche for Erling Haaland. The same Erling Haaland that I went against in that FA Cup week and the week before. And Haaland, you go against him, he scores against Arsenal in what looked like a tough game. He scores a brace against Real Madrid in what looks like a tough game. And he punishes you when you don't have him. And then you make silly punts in the FA Cup and go for Marmoush against Orient, who plays the 90 but doesn't score. And then plays like 9 minutes in the Champions League. So you think, okay, you have to go back to the trusted Erling Haaland. Then that's when Omar Marmoush then delivers the hat-trick against Newcastle. And my phone was like blowing up from you guys notifying me that Marmoush had scored. Thank you for that. And then scored again and again. So hat-trick for Omar Marmoush. I'm not bitter about it. To be honest, actually, I'm not actually that annoyed, because do you know those transfers that you have where you think, oh, should I take him out? Shouldn't I take him out? Should I take him out? Oh, I'm going to take him out. Oh, he scored a hat-trick. It was never like that. Marmoush was going to be the cut punt, and then Haaland was always going to come back in for the double. So I didn't actually feel too bad, to be honest with you, than if I was tempted to keep Marmoush. Now, if Marmoush had done well against Orient, there's every chance that I would have ended up keeping him. But yeah, didn't go well. So I've ended up -7 points down because of that Marmoush hat-trick when you look at the moves. But I've actually gone from 86th overall down to 55 at the time of recording. I know Dream Team do have a habit of changing points by around midday. So at the time of recording, I'm in 55th place. So this week, looking at my team, so Martinez got me 4 points. Virgil van Dijk got me 3. Porro and Trent, completely happy with those two. 17 points for Trent, 12 points for Porro. Luis Diaz, 13 points. I don't want to get too fooled by that, because we've held him for a lot of blanks just because he's delivered in that previous game. Let's not let it fool us. I still think he's someone that's going to be a problem down the line. So Diaz, Virgil van Dijk and Martinez, I'm not particularly happy with them. Kulusevski, I'd sort of earmarked to potentially move on this week. Just the 3 points in the last game against United. But he doesn't have the worst week. City and Ipswich. Bruno, 9 points. Foden, 8 points. I'm pretty happy with those guys. Watkins, 18 points up top. I really did like that move. Haaland, 7. Now, with Haaland, we're going to have to wait and see what the press conferences deliver. Is this injury going to be worse than first thought, or just was Haaland not feeling completely right and we'll be back next week? That's going to be a hard decision to make. I don't think Pep's going to make it easy for us. And then Salah, 42 points with the armband on, delivering as he usually does. So the main questions for me this week are going to be, what do we do with Haaland? Is he fit? Is he not fit? But again, I just think we're going to be guessing. And then I'm looking towards Diaz. Can I improve there? Kulusevski, could I improve there? Martinez, I don't think it's worth the switch at this point, so probably is going to just stay. And could I improve Virgil van Dijk this week? The appeal is to go for the more attacking players this week, but I do think he could be improved on Virgil van Dijk. So it's my thoughts roughly at the minute. Finished the week on 136 points and overall 55 on the leaderboard. So thank you very much for watching. Let me know how you got on for this game week. And if you have any questions going into game week 25, just drop a comment below. We've got our latest episode of the Dream Team Tonic podcast is out as well. There'll be a link in the description below, or you should be able to press a button somewhere and play the next video. So it should be there. Thank you very much for watching. And don't forget, it's a Friday deadline. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.